I'm Jay Manley, Chief Evangelist here at Mekorma, and in this video series, we're going to tell you about our remote payment services to help you decide whether it's a good choice for your organization's accounts payable team. We'll take a look at what remote payment services is, why you would choose remote payment services, what makes remote payment services a good or not so good fit for your business, how it all works, what remote payment services can't do for you, what it costs, and finally, how to move forward with remote payment services in your organization. Let's begin. So what is remote payment services? From this point, we'll call it RPS. And RPS allows you to outsource your organization's vendor payments, similar to what you probably already do with your employee payroll. Rather than having your accounts payable team process payments, then print checks in-house, you can automatically send that information from your ERP system to a third-party provider who will pay all of the vendors on your behalf. RPS is for AP departments that use Microsoft Dynamics GP or Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central. It's an integrated add-on solution that will safely transmit your payment information to a trusted payment provider. But you'll have all the advantages of maintaining your system of record and the approvals within your ERP system. The outsource provider will offer the following services. They'll pay vendors by printing and mailing checks, issuing ACHs, or sending virtual credit card payments. They'll continuously onboard and manage 100% of your vendors. They'll convert your vendors to accept virtual credit cards, earning you rebates. And they'll handle any payment issues or inquiries from your vendors. Finally, they'll take on all liability for payments that they send. You're off the hook for any and all fraudulent activity. So why choose remote payment services for your business? Here are a few primary reasons. First, you're ready to reduce or even eliminate paper-based payments, but you don't want to lose the ability to print in-house checks. Check printing can be time-consuming, expensive, and inefficient. Using Mekorma's solution means you'll have the flexibility to reduce the time and financial costs of continuing to print, fold, stuff, and mail your own checks. Second, you want to pay your vendors with electronic payment types, but you don't have the bandwidth to reach out and collect all of that information needed. It takes a lot of phone calls and emails, and your team is handling very sensitive information. With remote payment services, our partners will pay your vendors by check, ACH, or virtual card, and their team will do all of the outreach to onboard and continuously roll and maintain your vendors' banking information. Third, you want to save your AP staff from burnout and empower them to contribute even more value to your organization. Many of you are annoyed or even driven crazy by the fact that your AP staff is spending so much time generating, signing, and sending checks. The truth is, people want to do more interesting work, and there are strategic tasks that they could be trained to do. Fourth, you want an even stronger defense against payment fraud than your typical internal controls. Whether it's check fraud or business email compromise, you have to be very conscious of the potential threats to your organization's cash. With Mekorma's solution, you can approve payments in Dynamics GP or Dynamics 365 Business Central before sending them to the provider for processing. This will keep your workflow visible in your ERP. Additionally, our partners take on all liability for all payments sent through their platform. That means your business is off the hook for any committed fraud. Fifth, you'll see the benefits of the virtual card program. With our services, you'll get the rebates generated from the payments made from the virtual card. For most of our customers, this means that you'll most likely see more money in rebates than you pay for the services. And that means revenue coming back to your organization. To sum it all up, remote payment services reduces AP workload, processing costs, and the potential for fraud. and it helps them gain efficiencies and a potential revenue stream. Will remote payment services work for your company? Let's find out. To start, RPS is a good fit if your company performs account payable tasks in either Microsoft Dynamics GP or Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central. RPS is very effective in the following circumstances. If you currently pay a majority of your vendors by check, but want to transition to electronic payments, RPS can be a quick fix because the payment provider will do all of the onboarding for you. Your in-house team will not have to make calls, gather banking information, or remittance data. In case you've already converted most of your vendors over to ACH or EFT payments, RPS can still help with an essentials plan that allows you to outsource only the vendors that you still pay by check. If you have one or more people on staff who are devoted to printing and mailing checks, RPS allows you to have those people perform valuable tasks for the business because they won't be spending all day stuffing envelopes anymore. If your business is growing, RPS is going to relieve the tail end of the payment process. You won't have to manually generate and send payments in-house. If you have an increase in vendors as well as payments, it will not impact your existing staff. You can do more with less. RPS is most beneficial for organizations with an annual AP spend of over $10 million, and the benefits and rebates increase with your increased annual AP spend. So when is remote payment services not a good fit? Here are some examples. If your business primarily generates one-time payments, for example, medical or insurance reimbursements, RPS is not an ideal solution because it relies on repeated payments to vendors in order to generate those rebates for you. If you can't provide data on the last 12 months of your AP spend during the discovery process, we can't evaluate if RPS will work for you. In order to determine the best plan and ROI for you, we need to assess that information. If you're on Dynamics 365 Business Central, we have an Excel spreadsheet for you to fill out. But if you don't have that information readily available, we can't proceed. One of the requirements for outsourcing is sharing your vendor information so that the provider can onboard them and make payments. If you don't want to allow a third party to contact or handle your vendor information, it won't work. Be aware that you could always exclude certain vendors from the service and continue to pay them in-house, but a majority of your vendors will need to be a part of the service. And finally, if you already pay most of your vendors electronically or work with your bank to outsource your payments, you may not need this solution. But you're always welcome to get an assessment to see how the potential ROI compares with any other outsource programs that you benefit from now. To sum it up, remote payment services is best for mid-market companies that use Dynamics GP or Dynamics 365 Business Central and who want to transition from paper-based payments to a more streamlined and automated payment process. Mekorma Remote Payment Services offers a full vendor management team. So what do they do for you? First off, they will fully onboard your vendors to the program so that they can choose their preferred method of payment. When you get started with RPS, your vendors will need to get enrolled if they're not already part of the outsource provider's network. There are several ways that this can happen. The outsource provider will send a communication that provides your vendors with a secure URL. The vendors can follow the link to fill out their information and will be verified and enrolled. Your vendors can call the outsource provider directly, and the vendor support agent will also assist them. Your vendor can fill out a paper form and either enroll or snail mail it to the outsource provider. If a vendor needs to change any of their information, they must reach out directly to the vendor support team. If it is a change in banking information, they'll need to do a new verification process to ensure that the bank account information is valid and belongs to the vendor. Once you're up and running with RPS, the vendor management team will reach out to your vendors to see if there are any payment issues or be available if your vendors have any inquiries. This means that your vendors will contact the outsource provider, not your AP team to resolve any problems or requests. The vendor management process is one of those aspects that will save your team the most time. One of the biggest benefits of the RPS program is that your business is protected from fraudulent activities, far more than when you are paying in-house. If you experience check or electronic payment fraud now, it's likely you'll take a hit for it. But our outsourced provider is able to take on the liability for any payments sent through their service. They do this by setting up an FBO or for benefit of account. This account is a holding tank for the funds needed to pay your vendors, and all payments sent out will be tied to the FBO account instead of your bank account. When it's time to pay, the funds are withdrawn from your bank account and credited to the FBO account. Then the vendors are paid from the FBO account. So for example, when the outsourced provider sends a check to one of your vendors, the routing and banking account information on the check will not be that of your business bank account. The outsourced provider is liable for any fraud attempted against the FBO account, and you are off the hook. With RPS, you can build batches as if all of your vendors will be paid by check. It's when your payment data reaches the outsourced provider's system that the actual payment type will be recorded. The payment provider keeps record of how each vendor has agreed to be paid. And when the reconciliation data flows back into your system, it will once again appear as though all vendors are paid via check, simplifying the reconciliation process. If you outsource with Mekorma Remote Payment Services, your costs will depend on a few different factors. I'm going to give you an overview of everything that we take into consideration, but ultimately, your company's payment volume and mix will determine what the cost will be. You could also receive rebates, and those rebates often cover or even surpass the service's cost. We'll work with you during the discovery process to determine your costs and potential rebates and overall ROI. The first thing to know is that we have two RPS offerings. We have our full RPS program, meaning that the outsourced provider will handle all your vendor payments, whether your vendors are currently paid from your ERP system by check, ACH, or credit card. The Essentials program offers a limited service where the outsourced provider will only take on vendors where you currently pay them by check. And you can continue to pay your vendors that you already pay via ACH with your in-house team. For the full RPS program, there are three types of associated costs: a per transaction fee, a flat monthly fee, and a one-time implementation cost. Let's talk about each of these. Transaction fees apply depending on the number and type of payments you send monthly. Rates differ for each type of these payments sent. Checks, ACH, and virtual credit card payments carry different costs. In addition to transaction fees, the payment provider charges a flat monthly service fee. This fee generally is between $500 and $1,000 a month, depending on the number of payments. This chart shows what it could look like for a typical Mekorma customer to switch from in-house payment processing to our full remote payment services. In the customer's current situation, they process ACH and check payments in-house, which costs them about $5,000 annually. Once the outsourcing program is initiated, the provider estimates that 300 of their vendors are either already in the supplier network, accepting virtual card payments, or can be converted. Many of these vendors who have been getting check payments can be converted to ACH. This reduces their annual cost to just over $1,000.
Additionally, they'll get almost $11,000 in rebates from card payments, even though less than 20% of their vendors accept them. While they will have ongoing service fees, this business's transaction savings and rebates combined will net them almost $9,000.
The final cost I'd like to address is the one-time technical implementation of the software. This will depend on the number of checkbooks and company databases that you're configuring for the services. Additional fees may be charged if your system requires an upgrade, you need a customization, or you want to add functionality. To sum up, in order to get an accurate picture of what it costs and what rebates will look like, we need to look at your current vendor list, vendor spend, and the type of payments that you send. Then, we can analyze the data and offer a cost comparison just like the one I showed you. The timeline for implementing RPS depends on a few factors. We've seen some companies up and running in 3 weeks, and more complex implementations may take up to 6 or 8 weeks. One thing we've noticed is that some payment outsourcing companies promise to implement within a week, or even 24 hours. They're able to do that because they're not doing intensive security validations on vendors. One of the great benefits of Mekorma remote payment services is that the provider is going to take on all liability for all payments made. In order to do so, they onboard in the way that any very careful AP department would do. They validate the legitimacy of the business, scan through OFAC, and perform other important verifications. It's also very likely that many of your vendors will already be in the outsource provider's network of payees, which can speed up the process. For those existing vendors, the provider will already know which payment types they accept. But for the net new vendors, they'll perform the outreach necessary to onboard the vendors to check, ACH, or virtual card. There are a few other factors that influence implementation timelines. The number of companies that you're implementing. Obviously, the more complex the project, the more time it'll take. Finally, your availability is crucial in keeping things on track. We'll need to work closely with your team from the IT to the AP staff. Having a regular cadence of meetings and a good flow of communications is important. So your implementation won't be like anyone else's. It will depend on your unique situation. If you're interested in remote payment services for your business, there are a few steps that we'll take together. First, schedule a discovery call with me or another Mekorma partner manager. During that call, we'll get a complete picture of your current payment process. Then we'll ask you to use our simple assessment tool to send details of your vendors, including annual spend and payment type. This allows us to give you an ROI report that will detail your cost savings and rebate potential. Once you're ready to move forward, you'll sign contracts and get scheduled on the calendar for implementation. The time for implementing and learning your new system will vary depending on the scope of your work. If you're ready to take the first step, you can click the button at the end of this video to book a call. We look forward to helping you simplify and streamline your AP process.